Good morning, everybody. I think beach badminton looks fantastic. I don't know about anybody else. It looks like a great evolution for the game, which is an appropriate segue because our next session today is about the evolution of the game. We've got two fantastic guests here, and it will be your opportunity to ask questions of world-class players and coaches. So our first guest is someone who spent 12 years consecutively in the top 3 in badminton, was a multiple world finalist and a multiple winner of the All England. And our second guest is a double Olympic champion at London 2012 in the women's doubles and also in the mixed doubles. So I'm going to start us off, but unlike yesterday with Alistair, I'm not going to talk for that long today. This is really about you and your opportunity to ask them questions. So when we talk about evolution, have a think about the different areas that have evolved in your sport. So that could be tactics, it could be about fitness and performance and science, it could be about commercial, broadcast, sponsorship, image rights, it could be about laws and rules. All these topics are open to you, so have a think. I'll get us started and then we'll come to the floor. Remember, when you get the microphone, wait for the microphone, please. Hold it up nice and close to your chin and let us know who you are and where you're from today. Okay? So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome our guests for this session, Morten Frost, Zhao Yunlei, and translating for Yunlei, Wei Wen. Please welcome. Morten, if you want to go one over, I'll sit in there. You can tell we rehearsed that. So, Yunlei, welcome. Morten, welcome. If you would like to share the microphone and Wei Wen, if you can translate for us. So, we finished yesterday with Alistair and we were talking about culture and we were talking about the environment in which athletes now grow up, train and move on to performance. And you both come from different generations, I think it would be diplomatic to say, within badminton. But the senior partner in this, unfortunately, is you, Morten. You've been around longer. Talk to us about, when we think about the evolution of the sport, where you started in the sport and some of the resilience and single-mindedness that you had to show to get started.
That's the question.
No? I don't think so. It is.
Can you hear me?
No. We'll blame John for that. Sorry, John.
No, it works.
No.
I hope you can hear me. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for having me here. It's a great honour, and I will try to answer the questions as best as possible. And the one I've just got here is immense. It's really huge. So I can only say when I started playing when I was very young, as a junior in the 60s and 70s, which is way, way back.
The 1960s and 70s, in case you're wondering.
Yes. And of course, we didn't have the help of associations and clubs as what we see today. So it was very much fending for yourself. You were just doing it because you loved it. You were playing open tournaments, doing the best you could, and then go home and train some more. Later on, in the 80s, when I was one of the best players in the world, it was still the same in many ways. We were still kind of fending for ourselves, setting up our own training setups and paying for the courts, paying for the shuttles, paying for everything ourselves. And then, of course, going to play tournaments where we, on occasions, had invitations to go to Jakarta, to go to Tokyo, and so on. In the late 80s, and then starting in the 1990s, then suddenly all these national setups really started, and you saw strong setups in Jakarta, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in China, in Korea, in Japan, and so forth. And of course Denmark followed the same trend, and it has obviously been working really well. And as you can see, the game of badminton has evolved, got better and better every single day you watch it, and it's a real pleasure to see that.
Let's throw the same question to Yunlei. You come from, I suppose, a culture within China that from the outside looking in probably seems quite rigid maybe, or very collective. What was the environment for you when you started playing in China?
就是从外界来看的话，可能中国就是训练比较严格，很多团队精神。那么你就可不可以跟他们讲一下你从小那个训练的环境是怎么样的？
我们从小就是一层层选拔嘛，然后非常的严格。
In China, we've got quite strict selection criteria. So you start from school, you got selected from school, then you go to the provincial training center, and then junior national team, national team.
应该是从12岁开始，就要是有一个军事化的像训练，就是已经早出晚归这样，就是早上给晚上场。
From 12 years old, and she started with her professional training. So she moved into the training center. In the morning they wake up like 6 o'clock, and in the evening there's always like a curfew. You have to, turn off the light. 10 o'clock.
就是团队的管理有点像部队，就是军事化的那种。
Yeah. So the collective work is less like a military style.
就会在一起选拔，比如说有50个人，然后就一起的学习，然后训练这样子。
So there were like 50 of them. So they study together and they practice together.
统一管理吧，就是。
So they're managed by the provincial team.
And have you noticed since you started to now, what has changed in China? How has that culture developed?
从你开始，然后到你现在后来退役之后，这之间中国的羽毛球有些什么变化？
其实就是我们还是做了一些调整，我觉得，因为刚开始就像我说的是，可能大浪淘沙出来的只有一些很少量的人，但是在这个过程当中，我觉得我们有一些更先进的理念，包括原来只是一个教练，然后管所有的运动员，现在就可能有体能啊、科研啊各个的老师这样子去做。
So before there was like one coach who was in charge of everything, physical training or nutrition, whatever. You have to look after the players. Nowadays they've changed. They've got strength and conditioning, nutritionists. There are 2 coaches in the group, taking care of the group. There's an assistant, there's a head coach.
就是原来的话，就一个教练可能要管你所有的事情，就是生活啊、训练，包括思想。现在可能就更细化了一些。
Yeah, now it's more. This sports science is more diversified, rather than just one coach doing everything for everyone. So the different coaches share the responsibilities.
That was one of the themes of Alistair's talk yesterday, is the sheer amount of data, information, things like brand awareness and brand image. The number of things that players have to think about now has increased exponentially.
Yes, absolutely. I still remember it was possible to just shy away from the press and say, I don't want to talk about it. That doesn't happen today. It's social media, press, everything is just around you, and of course you have to answer for your performance. And I think one of the great challenges for badminton is that so many fantastic players are coming from Asia, and we're still not good enough in expressing ourselves. I think it's actually fantastic. It's the best translation I've ever heard, so really well done.
Thank you.
So very often it's getting lost in translation, and it's really nice that the players can express their own views and so on. And I think it would be great if players in the future would be able to express themselves a little bit more in English as well.
Okay. Broadcast is obviously one of the areas in which you're more recently involved in the sport. How important has the development of broadcast and the change to digital been for the sport of badminton?
I think it's huge. I think possibly one of the biggest things when we got into the Olympics in 1992, and then from there more and more money was poured into the sport. Of course, helped a lot. And then the new age of TV, we get more and more coverage, more and more personalities. The sport is on everywhere in the world if you want to watch it, and I think that's really good for the sport.
One of the byproducts, of course, of extra broadcast is about the image of the sport. And I noticed if you go back to one of your early appearances at the All England Championships in 1980, the title sponsor of the All England that year was John Player. Does anybody remember John Player? You're all too young. Oh, there's one at the back. He's happy to put his hand up. John Player was a brand of cigarettes in the UK. They were the title sponsor of the championships that year, and your own personal sponsor was? Carlsberg. So there we go. So the image of the sport has certainly moved on
Changed quite a lot
in that time. The commercial conversation around sport, and particularly around athletes' images, is a politically difficult one for a lot of sports. Badminton, we talk, and we'll talk a little bit about the Chinese model again, but badminton still seems very tied to the national associations in a way that maybe professional golf or professional tennis isn't, where individuals are much more in charge of their own situations. Do you see that? Do you see your sport moving in that direction now?
I definitely do. I really think that badminton has moved along rapidly over, let's say, 5-10 years. A lot of things has happened. And I think in the future, perhaps not in the near future, but in the future I can see that a lot of players will go more independent. If we look at Malaysia, if we look at Indonesia, lots of players are going independent and say, I don't want to be in the national setup anymore, I want to do it my own way. And we see that more and more, and I think that's something that we will see in the future, that the national associations setups will not be as strong as what we've seen over the past 20 years or so.
Do you think the same applies to China, where obviously the National Association is quite a powerful body? Lin Dan, to some extent, has tried to kind of break away a little bit and become more independent. Has that been successful? Do you see any changes coming in China in that respect?
中国不是管理也很严格的，像林丹他就要自己出去啊，就是好像不知道他这很成功。他现在就是说在管理上有什么变化？
我觉得是管理更加人性化吧，就是要突出一个运动员的，就是多元化。因为他林丹已经，我觉得他不仅仅是一个运动员嘛，他可能是这个项目的代表。所以就我们中国的团队也是现在就把这个项目可能放在成绩啊，或者说对我们的影响是放在项目影响，没有说像以前就是完全没有那么决定。
As diplomatically as you can, Wei Wen.
Well, just translate first part because it's a bit long. It's
okay.
So it's been a big change because before players were told what to do. Now the management is taking care of how, as a player, more all around how they develop. As Lin Dan is not only an athlete anymore, he has got some. He has got his own brand, so yeah. He promotes himself differently. So association is more relaxed in this term, just to be more taking care of how he feels, you know, as on the market, how he promotes himself. 再说一遍其他的。
现在看，就中国队没有说像原来就是成绩看到那么重要，就可能对于这个项目的宣传和发展都有一些新的思路。
So the association and the way they look at badminton is different now, because before they were thinking the medals, the results is most important, whereas now they are thinking badminton as a sport. They look at the bigger picture, how they develop badminton in China and how to make this sports more popular.
Yeah, so that's about participation and
Right.
numbers bring success. Right, let's go to the floor. Somebody must have a question nice and early. Gentleman at the back who...
Hi, I'm Alan McIlvaine from Hungary. The question is, the changes in the Chinese culture and the way they are thinking about it, is that because of the westernization coming into China, that children have more opportunities to do many different things, and so the association has to treat them differently than they did before?
So I suppose that's a liberalization of opportunity, I think.
中国的这些变化是因为更西化了，就是比较西方受到西方的影响。因为我觉得现在可能就是在网络上它也比较那个，就它的影响是因为就是西方不同带来的一些。
对，我觉得是整体项目，可能原来羽毛球是亚洲可能为主吧，现在就更加世界化。然后中国的一些教练员、运动员其实也受到更多元化的一些影响。
Yes, that's absolutely right. What you're saying. It used to be China was dominating, so they had less interaction with the other countries, and now because all the other nations, or the badminton becomes more globalized, and there are more nations coming up, so it's a challenge for them too. So they also have to adapt.
Good. Thanks, Helen. Any other questions from the floor? Yeah, one over here. Just wait for the microphone to reach you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Peter. I'm representing Norway. My question is regarding to training. What would you say is the biggest, I guess it's a question to both, changes in training? I understand it's quite a big question, but how has the training developed in load, in exercises? Doesn't have to be specific, but perhaps you can tell a bit about the changing from like 10 to 15 years.
Morten, we'll start with you.
I will start. Of course, it's changed a lot. I think the biggest change in the game was when we changed the scoring system. By changing the scoring system, we also changed a bit of the soul of the game. It's since 2006 or 7, as and when that scoring system was changed, I think it's become even more explosive. It's become much faster, and I think all training today is all based on how to build muscles, how to get stronger, how to get more reactive, how to play faster. It's all about pace, pace, pace. And you don't see so many different playing styles today as what you used to see in the past. And I think it's because there is only one way of playing, and then that's it. And as fast and as hard as you can play is the best way of playing. You very seldom see someone who's very defensive or counter-attacking or aggressive or something in between. More or less, the players are playing the same style of play, and I think that's got a lot to do with training methods. And as you can see, it's very successful when you are focusing on the physical aspect of it.
We'll put the same question to Yunlei.
跟训练跟以前有什么不一样？现在的训练，对，以前有比赛的制度有点不一样。
我们可能原来训练就是集中一段时间训练吧，现在可能因为比赛更多，就把训练的那些项目放在赛间去分开这样的，就赛间更重视赛间的训练。
In China, it used to be always like there's a camp. Yeah, they have a longer period of longer preparation period. Nowadays, because there's so many tournaments, they are focusing a lot on the training between those tournaments. So they are putting a lot of emphasis on this.
更短、更集中。
So it's more intensive, but it's shorter. Training is shorter.
I hope that answers your questions. One of the things from your past, Morten, that I noticed in a feature that Badminton World did with you was you talked about the influence that other players had on you in raising your levels, and in particular Prakash Padukone, who visited you in Denmark and who you credit with taking your game to another level. Does that sort of sparring between the top athletes still happen, or is there now too much at stake, or is it too competitive?
I think it's still happening, but of course this was a unique example of Prakash moving to Denmark, stayed in Denmark for 5 years. We trained together every single day, and I'm ever so grateful because he was elevating my play, and I got to where I got to based on the fact that we could spar every single day, so I say thank you so much.
If you're watching.
If you're watching, I'm sure you're watching somewhere. I also would like to say, I think it's a very good point from Yunlei, saying that players need to learn to train as and when they are away on playing tournaments. In the past, there were not so many tournaments, so it was going out, coming back home, doing some training, then going out again and so on. Now, they play almost 52 weeks a year, and they need to learn to practice, and practice well during as and when traveling. And I think that's one of the big changes as well. And it requires a lot of focus from the coaches as well to make sure as and when a player has lost in the tournament that they still carry on doing their training and then get ready for the next tournament the next week.
Yunlei mentioned about globalization of the sport, and the schedule presumably is a challenge now for modern players, managing their time, their diet when they're on the road as well. It's not like they can crash back to the hotel, have a microwave meal and go to bed. You've got to be thinking constantly on the road about how you're looking after yourself when you're training. Is that a challenge for modern players now, the schedule of events?
就刚你说，就是比赛很多，之间的训练时间更短，然后强度更大。那么在就是平时就是在管理上面，就是有没有就是说有什么变化？就是因为你你要讲有营养啊那些要注意营养，但是他每次就是比赛时间又很短，经常在国外，这个是你们是怎么样去处理这个的？
我们其实现在对运动员，如果长时间在北京或者集中训练的时候是有课的，是提前上那些运动营养的课，包括体能的一些课。那当然在平时当中先让他们了解。
Before they leave, normally they take lessons, so they take nutrition and fitness training. So players are supposed to know what they're supposed to do between two tournaments, especially when sometimes they are overseas.
然后他们思想上就是对这件事情就是有一些概念之后，到训练来说，我们就会直接给他们一些训练的计划，他会自己去管理，就是把管理平时都给他们做好，到比赛当中或者在赛间就会很快就自己管理，成功的对。
So because they were taking these courses, and so players they take control of managing themselves. So it's quite it's easier for the coaches to organize them.
我觉得现在最大的转变，就像刚才说的，原来可能是教练去管理这个队员，然后现在可能最大的就是平时做一些管理的训练，然后真的在赛场上或者在比赛之间就鼓励运动员自我的一种管理。
It's a big change. It used to be the coaches were doing everything for the players. Now coaches give more responsibilities to the players and to let them manage themselves because they are taking these lessons or courses beforehand. So it makes it easier for the coaches. So players know what they're supposed to do.
Much more prescriptive maybe than in your day. Right, back to the floor. Next question.
Hello, I'm June from Malaysia. I work in Hong Kong currently. I would like to ask both of you about what's the role of strength conditioning in competition phase like this? I mean, with the back-to-back competition, do you bring the SNC or even nutritionists or psychologists along? Do you think this is helping?
So strength and conditioning coaches, nutritionists, sports psychologists, back-to-back tournaments, do you bring them along? How much do you do when you're in competition mode? You can have that one.
I can have that one. I can have that one. For the major team events, I think the support team is a lot bigger. When players are playing normal open events during the year, having all these support people to follow them around the world is probably a bit too expensive. Some teams can afford it, but other teams cannot. If we go back to Denmark, where I come from, usually it's 1 or 2 coaches following the team. If they're very lucky, they have a physio to follow them as well. But apart from that, if you look at the Chinese team, the Japanese team and so on, the support team to the players is so much greater. So again, there's a big difference, and in Denmark you are more or less you're fending for yourself. You have to work it out, you have to find your own solutions. I don't know if that makes sense.
We'll move straight on to the next question. So you have the microphone.
Oh, yeah. Hi, I'm Toby from Germany, and also a question to both of you. Are there any players, active players at the moment, that really changed the game in your eyes, that really elevated like any discipline to another level?
Let's start with Yunlei.
你觉得现在目前就是不管是任何一个项目上面有没有人就是他整个改变了这个或者是单打或者双打或者他改变了这个毛球的这个
我就觉得可能不能说是一个人吧，但我觉得可能一种打法或者一种风格，它会影响一个时期。
So not only one player that changed everything, but it's kind of style of playing that changes, that probably during this period of time that changes the match of badminton in particular events.
就是某一个项目，用双打来说，它可能会因为哪几个组合的队员他的打法，然后去影响这个时期的整个水平的高低。
So there are a couple of well, she gives the example of the doubles players, and there could be a couple of doubles they have similar styles. So that will, because when playing against them, you need to adapt with the strategy or tactics. So that type of style will become a trend of this age or these 10 years. Or
there isn't a particular partnership, doubles partnership that Yunlei can think of that led the way to changing the style? Is there a particular pair?
我觉得就是在双打，就哪一队就比较典型的，他们真的是把整个羽毛球这个比赛就改，就是好像有一个不同了，就跟以前不一
There's
样。
no need for false modesty as well. If she's one of them, that's fine.
有没有哪一队就是比较有代表性的一队，他们改变？对，目前
我觉得可能印尼的那个男双吧。
是的Indonesian doubles 是哪个？
男双。
men's doubles 苏卡。
Okay, Morten, quickly to you. Let's focus maybe on singles in your case. Was there a player that really stood out to you over the course of your career, both as a player and then as a coach in broadcasting?
I met a lot of players, I've seen a lot, and I think they've all been brilliant. But I think it's always when you get a rivalry between 2 players, 3 players, 4 players. You see the women's singles at the moment is extremely competitive, and we're all looking forward to watching the women's singles because we know we can't guess who's going to win. It's so competitive. And when you look at the rivalry between Yunlei and of course Lindan, then that's what people are looking forward to. So as soon as you have these kind of rivalries, that's when the game is kind of developing.
Yeah, you can see that in tennis as well as
you see that as well. But I'd like to add on to just one thing that you asked, whether the support people and all that. I think what will happen is that in the future, players are earning more and more money, and chances are they're setting up their own setups, and perhaps their support system will get stronger, and that means that maybe a physio will follow the player, maybe a doctor will follow the player, and so on. The more money that comes into it, the more they're looking to set up their own setups.
Good. We're in the last 30 seconds, so let's make it 2 really quick ones over here. Sir?
I'm John from Singapore. I just want to ask regarding evolution of the serve. We moved from the singles, we normally do the high serve, and then now the guys are doing more low serves, but the girls are still doing the high, but gradually moving to the low serve. That's one. And the other one is the service, those are double service. Yunlei, probably, I really admire her serve because she plays both mixed doubles and ladies doubles, and she's very cool composure. Maybe she can give us some hints and tips on how she go through her mind during the service for doubles.
Let's start with that then, the mindset of going through service. I'm not sure if there was a question there rather than just adoration, but an admirer of your calmness and control on serve. Maybe you'd like to respond to that.
发球很好，就是为什么你会你的每个球发的质量这么好，为什么这么冷静？就是说，你可不可以讲一下这个？
其实我觉得这是一个过程，就刚开始的时候就是也会经历很多不稳定的时期，但是一定要找到一种方法是可以让自己在就对面男生压力大的时候冷静下来。我觉得找到这个方法非常的重要。
It's a bit of a learning curve, and she also hit. At the beginning, she was also struggling, but she said it's quite important to find a way that could calm you down. So that what I feel makes you feel comfortable, yeah, especially when a tall male athlete was standing in front. So you need to find a way that makes you feel comfortable and make you calm down.
我平时如果练发球会找到很多方法吧，就可能往前站的男孩子就是站得非常前，可能踩到线以上，就是给我这种压力。我在平时训练当中就去练。
For example, she is quite intimidating if the guy is standing in front and sticks the arm out and step on the line. So what she does is that she deliberately, her training partner is standing really close to the net, so to give her more pressure while she was practicing the serve.
其实我觉得发球除了技术，更重要的是心理，它的一个稳定和一个胆量吧。
So serve, when you practice serve, technique is one thing, but the most important thing is just the might. You need to have the right state of mind. So to basically just need to calm down.
We're
mental.
I thought that was a great answer. I hope it helped answer your question. There's another part of your question that I think you may need to ask Morten over coffee as we're well over time and already late. Right, so you have the microphone. I'm hoping this is going to be a short one.
Okay, hi. Not really, but okay. Nigel from Munich in Germany. Morten said something that for me was really revolutionary, and that's that at the moment we're all going on for the old, I'll call it old Chinese way of collecting everybody into little groups and only the top guys, and they all have to do what the trainers say. Now you just said we can allow individualization, so that would be the top players, Lindan, whatever, can basically sort of break out from the system and still be in the system, which of course is very difficult money-wise, and so if you could just sort of go a bit deeper into that thought.
It's the existential threat to your sport. Start now. Let's keep the answer to this short, and you can follow up in person afterwards. But just maybe a brief thought just to close out.
First of all, I think all of us, and my aim with the game of badminton is obviously to have the best players to play the tournaments. That's my aim. There is no two ways about it. Having said that, if for instance, just look at Denmark. Denmark is very liberal. We still have the training back in Copenhagen. Everyone is there, but we have a situation where Victor Axelsen, and this is public knowledge, he's considering whether he wants to go to Dubai and set up his own setup there, because he feels that that's possibly the best thing for him to do. And if that happens, and then possibly Alex Antonsen after him, then of course you can easily see that we are spread around the world in a second. But I think that when you look at Malaysia, they have a lot of independent players. They're setting up their own systems. Indonesia's doing the same, Korea's doing the same, and so on. I think there's a lot of things happening now where players want to break free of these systems and want to try to do it on their own because they feel that they might be better off that way. And only time can tell. But I think the biggest issue here is money. Money, money, money. Money talks. And if you've got the money and you feel that you want to have your own coach, your coach, who's only looking after you, I can understand that. So I think it's moving that way, whatever way we're looking at it.
It's a meaty conversation for you all over coffee. We really must stop, or you're going to get a very short lunch break, I can promise you that. Could you please give you a very warm thanks to Yunlei.